Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Caregiving Gen X Style. I am Steve Mullen.
And I'm Jennifer Mullen.
You know, we talked already about the places your loved one will stay and the people who will be helping them, and even some of the experiences they may have. This episode is about the people they will meet, both workers and residents, at places like hospitals, skilled nursing, and assisted living. We can pretty much guarantee that you will bump into most of these people at some point or another, and that's why we call this episode The People You'll Meet. But first, Jennifer, how's your mom?
Mom's great. Actually, you may recall at the end of the last episode, I mentioned something about having a really nice day with her, taking her to the art museum and then out to lunch. But what I didn't have the chance to share was when we got to the restaurant, of course, there's a whole system Mom and I have to get her out of the car, right? Her mobility is very limited. Need to pull up close by the sidewalk. I've got to stop the car, put on the hazards, run around, make sure she gets out safely, and either, make sure there's some place for her to stand and something for her to hold on to, or quickly walk her into the restaurant and then run back out, get my car, park. It's a whole thing. Well, we had the nicest experience. So there was a family that was walking in, and I honestly wasn't paying super close attention to them. But then I heard the mom say to her family, like, you guys go in, I'm going to wait for a second. And then when I turned around, I realized she specifically was waiting for us. And she said to me, she's like, wow, she's like, you guys have a whole system down. And she said, I'll help your mom into the restaurant. You go park your car.
So sweet.
It was the nicest thing, really the nicest thing. So, of course, I did that. I parked my car, get in. Mom is seated at the table. I, of course, made a point to go back over to this woman and her family and just thank her. And Mom shared that, as the woman was walking her in and getting her seated at the table, they had a nice little conversation. That was really good. And then when we were leaving the restaurant, one of the owners, pretty sure it was one of the owners, happened to be there as we start to get up and start our whole system. I'm getting up, I'm getting Mom's cane, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, had to first run out, get the car, bring it back up. And he knew I was going to have to do all that. And he stood there and he chatted with my mom and he waited with her. He waited with her by the car, helped her get outside. Again, just so nice, totally unprompted. Just a lot of kindness.
We live in a bit of a small town, and every so often you can remember that.
Yeah, well, that is true.
People willing to help people.
Right, that's true. That's true. But, I came home with renewed faith in humanity, so that was good. So
it's a good thing.
Steve, how's your mom?
So I mentioned in the last episode that my mother had been in the hospital and that she was now home. Well, we've got a bit of an update on that. As of the time we're recording this, currently they're looking for a skilled nursing facility for her. And the reason for that, the healthcare director at her assisted living was not entirely sure that my mother should go straight from the hospital to assisted living. She kind of felt like she should probably go to skilled nursing. Well, I talked her out of it. And
well, you talked her out of it because your mother was so adamant. We all understand, and you were trying to advocate for her.
I was. I absolutely was. And, as it turns out, my mom is a little bit weaker. We know this, and we expected this. And I think she's doing pretty well, but the folks at the assisted living don't necessarily agree, and they're saying she needs to go off to skilled nursing for a little bit.
And probably, truth be told,
it is
she
probably true.
Should have.
I knew she was borderline. The healthcare director knew she was borderline. There's a lot of he said, she said going on around there about how she actually is doing.
Yeah.
She thinks she's doing really well, and from what I've seen, I think she's doing really well. But then there's at least one CNA that says, no, she's really not.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're seeing that I'm not seeing.
It's hard to
I'm
tell.
not there the whole time.
Hard to tell.
That's what we're doing. Probably as of the time that this episode will publish, hopefully she will have gone to the skilled nursing facility and gone out of the skilled nursing facility. We'll find out and we'll update it later.
I think another thing to mention too, though, is your mother was discharged from the hospital with orders for physical therapy and occupational therapy. Occupational therapist showed up pretty quickly, and it's someone that she's worked with before and really likes him, so that's awesome. But by the time all of this was sort of coming to a head, it had been, about a week?
It was a week and a half before she finally got PT.
Physical therapy.
At least a week.
Well,
at least
right.
a week.
So, it's unfortunate that big, huge delay did not help.
Yeah, and, I asked about it, and I was told, well, you asked for this particular physical therapist and she's been a little busy. And I said, well, you asked me if we wanted the same one. I said, sure. My mom said, sure. If we'd been told at that point that she was busy, we would have said, just get us whoever's not busy.
Well, but a little bit of a lesson learned, though.
Exactly.
Definitely. So, and I think also lesson learned, as we have talked about, even though no one wants to go to the skilled nursing facility, it really probably, when you've had a traumatic experience like your mom had, and some procedures, and she was in the hospital for a week, probably would have been the best thing for her.
Yep.
So
she's
we know.
actually a little irritated at her assisted living right now. So she's actually not necessarily giving a hard time about leaving for a little bit, which is unfortunate.
Right.
She said, maybe it'd be a good thing to get out of here for a little bit, which is unfortunate. I'm not real happy about that. And there may be a meeting coming with the healthcare director. It's entirely possible.
I think that's probably a good idea. So let's jump into this episode.
Yep. And as we said in the intro, this episode is all about the standard people you will come across as you and your loved one navigate through hospitals, nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, and assisted living. There are the word archetype keeps coming up in my mind. Is that correct usage of the word?
I believe it is. Usage? I think it is.
I believe it is. So,
stereotype?
It's a stereotype. Yeah, I mean, there are standard people. We've come across these people just about everywhere. Yeah. So I don't know if it's a stereotype or not. Regardless, first let's talk about the employees.
There's the grumpy nurse or CNA.
Yes.
We've got to talk about this one first, right? So nothing is universal, but this is about as universal as it comes.
Yep.
Every facility has a nurse or a CNA that's just frankly kind of crotchety. In some instances, I suppose it could actually even be endearing, and they may be really good at their job, but this is the nurse who will grumble, complain, bitch all the way through their shift. And it really does kind of suck when you come across them, though, because, right, I think often of nurses, CNAs, when you're in these situations, it's customer service.
It is.
It is customer service. And your customers do not want to hear you bitching and moaning about whatever might be happening in the workplace that day. Just like if I walk into a restaurant or a clothing store or whatever, if there are employees complaining about things, it's not good.
It's true.
So it's true. It's definitely not good in a healthcare situation.
Have you come across the grumpy nurse or CNA?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next one is the new nurse or CNA. We've talked before about the turnover with CNAs in particular. It's rapid. They come in, they're gone. They come in, they're gone. You will likely meet far more than one of these people in your, particularly if your loved one is in a nursing home, skilled nursing, or assisted living with the CNAs. You're going to see new CNAs all the time.
All the time.
They are bright and they're enthusiastic, but they have no idea what they're doing, where anything is, or even sometimes who they are. They seem clueless. And these are the people that my mom says she frequently has to train. The hope is they stick around long enough to become useful, and a lot of the times, unfortunately, they just don't. Yeah,
like I think about your mom in the assisted living facility. I mean, we probably couldn't count on two hands how many CNAs have cycled in and out, in and out, in and out. And to her point, like just when you get used to someone, and then they're gone, and that does kind of stink. So, well, there is also the service nurse. So when facilities, no matter what type, are really low on CNAs or nurses, they call a nursing service who will provide one short term. So typically they're kind of like the new nurse in that they don't really know how a place works or where anything is kept. You'll find them a lot of times working at night, which is good because that means, patients are sleeping. So it's hopefully a little bit quieter. But then sometimes, the downside is if a patient needs something, they don't always know where to get it.
And the funny thing about these contract nurses, the service nurses, whatever you want to call them, a lot of times they're very experienced nurses. They've been doing this for years, but they just bounce from facility to facility to facility. And like we said, they don't know where anything is. And while they may be very good nurses, that's the part that gets in the way.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of times they stick around for a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month, and they start to learn things, and then they leave and go someplace else.
It's like perpetual onboarding.
Yes.
Yeah, perpetual orientation. Yeah.
The travel nurses, which we talked a little bit about, it's very similar to the service nurse. They have an interesting life. They don't work at one hospital. Instead, they're contractors. They're brought in for short-term gigs to cover shortfalls in staffing. Some of them go all over the country. I actually met one in a hospital where we live who was from Texas and was making her way up the eastern seaboard. She lived out of a camper. And actually, she said her camper at that point was broken and in the state south of us. And she was, as a result, living in a hotel. She wasn't really thrilled about it. Like the service nurses, travel nurses are usually experienced, but they have, again, one problem in common with the service nurses. Usually they don't know where anything is.
Yeah, we've heard a couple of interesting things from people who we know who work in healthcare settings related to the travel nurses. I think this happened like during the pandemic. There was this huge boom in travel nurses being used.
It's because no hospital had enough nurses.
Right. And they, I think, were making gobs and gobs of money, which, yay for them. They are. I don't think as much as the...
It's going back down.
It's going back down. But yeah, I do think if you're the tenured nurse in a facility, I think probably that can maybe be an interesting dynamic because you have these travel nurses coming through. They don't really know where anything is. Probably the tenured nurses feel like they're sort of training them. And meanwhile, the travel nurses are probably making 3 times as much money.
Yes.
It's a really kind of interesting dynamic, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Let's talk about the quote unquote sweet nurse.
Much like quote unquote Brad.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Right. So sweet in quotation marks. This is the person who speaks to the patient or residents in a really sickeningly sweet voice.
How is everything going? You doing good? You doing good? Everything's good. Can I get you anything?
Yeah, that is.
Oh, look at you. You're so sweet.
Oh, it's like
that's what we're talking about.
Far more than the recommended daily allowance of sugar, for sure. They usually come off as, I hate to say it, because it could be genuine, but they usually come off as fake, but you can't prove it because, at least in public, they have that demeanor.
And there's theoretically nothing wrong with that.
Right, exactly. I think your mom in particular has no patience for that kind of...
She can see through the whole thing.
Well,
and so I'm sure your mother does too.
It's also a little bit like, it feels a little bit like baby talk sometimes too.
Sometimes it is.
It can come across almost as a little condescending,
Sometimes
right?
it is.
Like I'm ill and or like I'm in assisted living. I'm not a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the next one is the my way or the highway nurse. And believe me, my mother has come across more than her share of these. This is usually a seasoned nurse who has seen it all. They know how everything works, but they have no flexibility. It's very lacking.
Yeah, which seems like it's a critical thing in a healthcare setting.
Flexibility and problem solving, but no. It doesn't matter, for instance, if a resident prefers to transfer from their bed to their chair in a particular way. You're going to do it her way or not at all. And believe me, my mother has come across that more than once.
Yes.
Interestingly, this person can also sometimes be a brand new nurse who hasn't learned to be diplomatic. And my mother's met that one too. They say, this is the way you're supposed to do it.
Right.
This is the way we just learned about it last week in CNA school.
Right. Well,
and that's the way it's going to go.
Which is I also think about our daughter who is going to be a young, brand new nurse.
Yes.
She's going to want to follow the rules and the way that she was taught how to do things. I understand that too, right? You go to school for a reason and you learn how to do these things. It takes time. Like I would say, it takes time in any career to learn how to be flexible and problem solve and think outside of the box a little bit.
Well, with them, it may be competence too. Competence to do things a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Right. All right. The next one is the gossip.
The gossip. There's always a gossip or 5.
This could be a resident, so like in an assisted living or even long-term, skilled nursing facility, if you're there for an extended stay, whatever, right? It can be a resident or it can be an employee. So we've definitely met, front desk people and dining room people who are more than happy to tell us everything
I know who to go
to
get the scoop on what's going on.
Which is actually kind of handy.
It's handy, but it's not okay. They're not supposed to be telling you a lot of this stuff,
but
they do it anyway.
They're probably not supposed to be telling you a lot of this stuff, although, I feel like as long as it's not your mom doing it or my mom doing it, like this happens.
And,
right?
the now former activities director at my mother's assisted living. Who my mother loved.
But
and really everybody, oh my gosh,
overshared.
I got so much dirt out of her.
Yeah.
She would just come out. My mother and I would be sitting out front on the benches and she'd come out and sit with us and chat and just spill everything.
Yeah, which is really not good.
Not okay.
She shouldn't have been doing that.
Details about people's work histories and this, that, why somebody's no longer there, why an employee's no longer there, everything.
Yeah. Although I think sometimes, though, you have to be careful, too, because a lot of times they might not actually really know what's going on.
Exactly.
The resident in particular, but even sometimes the employees might not always know what's going on with somebody else. So you beware of the gossip. It can be entertaining,
yes,
but also got to take some things with a grain of salt.
It's true. All right, let's move on to the residents now. We've done the employees. Now let's talk about the residents. So the first one is the wanderer. So You'll see this in assisted living, you'll see this in a nursing home, and you'll see this in skilled nursing. Probably not so much the hospital. They don't like these people to get up and out of the bed. And we're not making fun of these people, but for sure, every one of these facilities has a wanderer. They've most likely got memory issues or another sort of neurological issue. But regardless of why, they are frequently just wandering around. They may get up in the middle of a meal and just walk away. I've seen it happen. You'll find them sitting all over the facility, and you only hope that they don't wander out the front door, and I've seen that happen before.
Well, which is always, also why a lot of these facilities, I can remember my mom being in the skilled nursing facility now a couple of years ago. There was a very specific way when you were inside about how you could get outside, and you had to either press a button. I can't remember now because it's been a couple of years. You either had to press a button or you had to wait and hope somebody saw you to actually let you out of the doors.
Oh, wow.
To go back outside.
That's skilled nursing?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I remember thinking initially, oh my God, this is such a pain. What the heck is going on? Except that then I realized there were some people there who were wanderers. Yeah. And they had to be, you had to be careful. You had to make sure that they couldn't just walk out. And the skilled nursing facility where my mom was fairly close to a
major road,
decent sized road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want just someone wandering out into the middle of that.
That's interesting. The skilled nursing where my mother has been several times now, it's just an automatic door. However, right next to that automatic door is where the front desk is. So
Same
you would
thing
hope
here.
That if someone who looks like a patient just wanders out by themselves, somebody would say something.
Maybe. I mean, it was automatic doors at this place too. And yes, you would hope. But I think it wasn't 24/7 like that. I think it was after a certain time in the evening, and the front desk wasn't staffed. And then you had to hope you could track down a CNA or a nurse or some other employee there who eventually could let you out. I think that's how it was. I don't think it was 24/7.
So you know about this. Recently, I actually got trapped in my mother's assisted living for that very same reason. After 8 o'clock, they lock the doors.
Right.
And I had gone over there. So this was an example of, is this an emergency from a few episodes ago? Mm-hmm. My mother calls, her TV is not working. She's in bed. And what my mother usually does, she gets into bed about 7 o'clock. She watches TV for a few hours, and then she goes to sleep. Now, again, my mother's in a wheelchair. She can't just get up out of bed and go to the bathroom, go get a magazine, go get a book, fix the TV. She can't do any of those things. Yeah. Once she's in bed, unless she presses her emergency button, she's kind of just trapped. So her TV wasn't working. It was the cable box, actually. So she calls me up, and it was about 7 o'clock. And I said, okay, I feel like this is an emergency. I'm going to run over there and fix it.
Well, right. You don't want her staring at the walls.
No, I didn't want her to stare at the ceiling for. Yeah, exactly. So I ran over there. I got there about 7:30, and it really just needed to be reset, just unplugged and plugged back in. But by the time I visited for a little while, and by the time I left, it was past 8 o'clock. I walk out there, the door's locked. There's another family member. There's a button to push. Like you said, you press a button and someone's supposed to come let you out. Nobody was letting us out. We sat there in the lobby for 20 minutes waiting for someone to let us out until the other family member said, I think I know where they are, and went up to the third floor and got them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the downside of it. But again, there aren't as many people working at that point. There's nobody at the front desk, so it's probably a good thing.
It also means there was no resident going rogue.
Yes,
exactly.
So
that was a good thing. So
okay, we digress quite a bit there.
We do. All right, so let's move on to the next one. It's the TV watcher.
Yes.
So this is definitely more of a skilled nursing facility or nursing home kind of thing. These facilities usually have TVs in the rooms, But some also have lounge areas that look a little bit like living rooms, complete with a larger TV. So this person can nearly always be found planted in front of that TV rather than the one in their room. Often a man. Sorry,
Often a man.
But it's
No,
true. It
it's
really
okay.
is true.
I wrote these copious notes, and I am a man, and I recognize most of the time this is a guy.
It might have something to do with the TV being larger, because apparently bigger is always better. Or, maybe their roommate wants to watch soap operas or HGTV
exactly.
or Below Deck or Hallmark or I don't know, whatever these shows are, the people, right? So, but regardless, they've determined that they own that TV and they will keep that remote to themselves.
I really thought about this when I wrote this. There, in the skilled nursing where my mom has been a few times, there is a situation like this. It looks like a nice little living room. It's got a couch. It's got a rocking chair and a faux fireplace and everything. It looks really nice. And there's a TV mounted over the fireplace. And there was this one guy.
I remember.
Who had he owned, I swear, I think when he wasn't out there, he put the remote in his pocket. Yeah. It was his TV. And what was going to be watched was what he wanted to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anybody else that wanted to hang around and watch TV with him is fine. They're fine to do that, but forget getting the remote.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's a common living space. So how do you...
Yeah, but they've completely taken it over. That's the problem.
I know, but I mean, what are you
going to do about it?
Unless there's rules that say okay, you, Steve, get the remote for 30 minutes and then you're going to pass it on to the next person. No. It's a little bit like the episodes where we've talked about it's a lot like school, kindergarten, got to share.
Exactly. And I don't remember what it was he liked to watch. I feel like there was war movies and stuff, like World War II movies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not my thing.
U-boats and stuff.
Ugh.
So the next one is the person who doesn't want to be there.
This is a tough one.
This is a tough one because usually this person, they've got some kind of neurological problem going on. And we understand most residents of facilities, assisted living facilities and nursing homes and skilled nursing, they'd really rather be elsewhere, right?
Wouldn't we? Yeah.
No
Wouldn't
doubt
we
about
all?
that.
Right.
But this person is more than willing to tell anyone who will listen the story of why they are there involuntarily, which may or may not be true. We've also heard stories from people who say they were shoved into assisted living so family members could take their home. It also may be true, but I keep thinking the cost of assisted living is far more than a mortgage.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Way more.
Yeah, way more. So there may be a lot more to that story. It's best when you're talking to these people to put on that concerned face, nod your head, say, I'm sorry to hear that, and find a way to get somewhere else because they're not going to stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And do you remember the one we came across? We were actually
touring the other facility.
Assisted livings. And
she kept talking about her family in Michigan who put her there. But I think she was having some memory issues too.
For sure. A lot of these folks do, but the crazy, funny, whatever kind of thing about it is that we were in her apartment because the marketing director or the person that was showing us around the facility wanted to show us an apartment and there were none available. So she asked, can we show your apartment? And then she proceeds to tell us how she hates to be there and doesn't want to be there. And it was kind of uncomfortable. She lived
in Michigan, but her niece maybe moved her here to this city where we are. And I think it was it was probably a necessity, but she just kept talking about how much she missed Michigan.
And she seemed like such a sweet little old lady.
She seemed very sweet. I definitely, definitely felt
and she
bad
had,
for her.
She had oxygen canisters all over that apartment.
Yeah, she
must have about 10 of them.
Yeah, I was a little worried we were going to blow up.
Don't let a match.
Yeah, so. All right, well, the next one, this one's kind of fun, actually. The king or queen of the facility. So every one of these facilities has a king or a queen bee. They are the most popular person in the building, and they know it. So, for example, where your mom is, we spotted this person. He was the king. We spotted him the first day we started moving furniture in. He's one of the few men in the building.
I think we can go ahead and say his name because it's a common name. Tom.
He wears very brightly colored clothes.
He's always got a Hawaiian shirt on. He's
got a rollator, and it's always decorated. There's little stuffed animals hanging off of it.
Feather bows.
Right, and ribbons, and Like,
He's usually wearing some kind of gaudy hat.
right. All kinds of stuff. Now, he also super friendly, smiling, talking to you, and also often seemed to be holding court with any number of people in the building. So, these are people who, often seek attention, and just like the popular kids in high school, there could be reasons maybe not to hang out with them too much.
Right. So here's the thing. This guy, Tom, he's had a fall from grace in the 2.25 years since my mom moved into this place.
Happened?
A little bit. Well, he was obviously the king. And since then, though, he fell. He broke his leg really badly in like 3 or 4 places. He was in a wheelchair for a while. He was not seen for a long time because I think he was held up in bed. He was holed up in bed. He's back, gained a lot of weight, and really seems like he's not himself as much anymore.
Oh, so it's not that people don't want to be around. He's just
not
sad.
As
gregarious,
yes, good word for that.
But that's sad.
It is kind of sad, and there's a lot of rumors floating around that he drinks tons of alcohol in the evenings. That's one of the rumors that I got.
It's gossip. I'm just saying.
It is gossip. Some of the gossip I got.
And is this a bad thing? I mean, right? Who the heck cares?
To the level where he's basically an alcoholic, and again, who cares?
Well,
really,
unless it's affecting how he's interacting with the other residents. I mean, that's a different thing.
The fall was probably related to that.
Steve,
I know.
You're making stuff up.
I
you don't
am not
even know.
making stuff up.
To all of you out there listening, seriously, Steve is just making stuff up now.
Well, they're probably related.
You apparently would fit in perfectly.
I keep telling you, put the grippy socks on me and let me play bingo all day. I'll be just fine.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
So the next person is, when's dinner? Oh, yeah. I see this one a lot. So we've talked about how residents in assisted living and nursing homes show up for dinner about a half an hour before the dining room opens. So, they've made it clear at my mother's assisted living that dinner is served at 5 o'clock. At 4:30, the dining room is half full.
Yes,
so
it really is.
It's true.
Yeah.
And my mother wants to go up at 4:45 again before anything's available. And, at that point, they start taking orders.
Yeah. Well, and I think that started in the beginning, though, because she was worried about getting a spot at a table, or she wanted to make sure she got
her spot now.
She does now.
And by the way, you know
true.
what I just noticed the other day? It is literally in the middle of the room.
Yeah, it's always been there.
Smack in the middle. I know.
Yeah,
I never
that's where
really
her
paid
table's
much
always
attention to
been.
that. It's just interesting. She is right in the middle. Anyway, so
it took you 2 years to figure that out.
No, it isn't. I just never paid attention to it. I mean, obviously I knew, but I never paid attention to it.
Okay.
So these people, sometimes you'll find them just sitting in their seat in the dining room all day. And I know, at my mother's assisted living and a lot of them, they say, well, anytime you want to come up to the dining room and get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, you're welcome to do that.
Well, it's also a nice, bright room, too.
It is a nice, bright room. And, there are people wandering around doing stuff like employees and stuff. So there's company around, but they're very much in the way of meal prep is the problem, and getting tables ready
the table
and
set. Not really meal prep, but
But they aren't doing anything wrong. That's the thing, is that these assisted living facilities advertise that you can get your coffee, your midday coffee, anytime you want.
Yeah.
It's also kind of sad because a lot of times this person just is there because they don't know what else to do. And that's the sad part of it. They haven't. And then I know at my mother's assisted living, there's a guy sitting there pretty much all day long.
Yeah. Although, maybe we don't need to be sad. Maybe he's perfectly content sitting there all day long.
As long as he is.
So who are we to judge, Stephen?
I am me to judge.
Oh, I know you do. All right. Well, the next one we're going to talk about is the person you sort of wonder, why are they here?
Why do they stay in this assisted living, nursing home, skilled nursing?
There always seems to be at least one person, especially in assisted living, that you can't figure out. They seem completely with it mentally, and they seem to have no trouble with mobility, and you wonder why they're there. Now, of course, there could definitely be something that isn't obvious, or maybe they just don't want to take care of themselves at home anymore. Maybe they want it for social interaction, or maybe they just need something very minor like, medication management, or maybe they just don't, maybe it's not safe for them to cook and they need to be somewhere where they can get 3 hot meals a day. I don't know. I mean, in the end, you're never really going to know, but Probably shouldn't ask either, because it's really, frankly, none of your business.
Yes, it is none of our business. None of our business. None of our business. None of our business. But actually, there was one at my mother's assisted living, and I did figure it out. I didn't ask. It wasn't my business.
Shocker.
However, there was a guy walking around, and I swear he really isn't all that much older than I am. I mean, he's maybe low 60s, right? And I wondered, and he seemed to get around just fine.
Maybe he wants to play bingo.
It.
You said you want to play bingo.
Here's what I found out. So he was at the assisted living and then later moved over to the independent living facility, which is right next door. The reason he was in assisted living is that his mother lived there.
Oh,
and he was staying with his mother.
Okay.
And his mother passed away. And then, so after that, there was no reason for him to be in assisted living anymore. So he is in an independent living and I think over there, it's just probably he would rather have somebody make his meals for him.
Right.
And there's some activities and stuff like that.
Plenty of people move into like older independent living communities.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about it before. There's another one not that far from where your mom is. That's an independent living community that is like the Mac Daddy independent living community.
We've talked about it before. It's where the rich grandparents live.
Yep. Like cruise ship on land.
Oh, it is.
Right. I mean, they have
4 restaurants, 2 pools, a garden walking trail. I mean, you name it.
Now, you have to sell off your firstborn child to be able to afford to move in there.
And your firstborn child and your secondborn child's organs. I mean, that's the only way you're getting in there. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars just to move in the door.
Yep.
Our final person.
Yeah, we're going to end on a sad one, though.
It is kind of sad.
We should have flipped these last two.
Yeah, well, it is.
We're going to talk about the screamer, right? So this is the person who's usually in a hospital, nursing home, skilled nursing. Every hallway seems to have one.
It's true.
This is the person who, for whatever reason, yells out at all hours of the day or night. Now, you feel horrible for them. You feel really bad for them because clearly they're distressed and no one can seem to quiet them down. Your mom had one next door in the first day at skilled nursing and then had the screamer as her roommate the next time she was in skilled nursing. Gagi had one during her stay in skilled nursing as well. I mean, I remember, just from across the hallway, it was like, it was so loud.
Yeah.
And it was also heartbreaking.
Yes, it's heartbreaking because they obviously feel like they need something. They need to cry out for something, but nobody knows what it is a lot of times.
Right. Well, right. And I think what I felt like I witnessed happening with my mom and the screamer across the hallway was, I think for the most part, the nurses kind of weren't paying a ton of attention to her anymore. And you know, maybe that's okay to a certain extent, but then you also wonder like, oh my gosh, like what if something really is wrong, right? The boy who cried wolf, like what if something really is wrong at any given point with this person, but the nurses have gotten so used to just hearing them scream all the time that they don't come when they're actually in distress. So that's always a little concerning to think about. But, you know, in the end, I will say too, right? Like, you care about your loved one. And if your loved one is not the screamer, but they are in close proximity with the screamer, it can be a little frustrating because, you know, like I know, like my mom was having a hard time sleeping because this woman screamed all day long. Same thing with your mom. So
I'm going to go ahead and add one.
Okay.
Just so we're not ending on a negative note.
Okay, good.
This is not going to be one that you necessarily see everywhere.
I'm waiting. I'm ready.
The singer.
The singer.
The singer.
Yeah, that's probably true.
At my mother's assisted living facility, there is a woman who walks around all day long singing the same song.
Ooh.
Hallelujah.
Which is a lovely song.
It's a lovely song. I swear everyone's sick of it, though.
Yeah.
Ooh. Everyone's sick of it. And, you know, she's got a fine little voice. She's this, tiny little woman. I mean, she's about as big around as a baseball bat. And
that's a weird analogy.
I know, but I think, you know what? I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. She's just not a lot to her.
Okay.
Not a lot to her. And she walks around singing Hallelujah all day long.
Yeah.
And I've seen my mother's BFFs there who are complainers and have very little patience for anybody. She walked by one time and they said, oh my God, just please shut her up.
Oh.
And I feel bad. I know for a fact that she's not entirely.
Speaking of some queen bees.
They kind of are a little bit.
On.
Yeah. But I get it. And I know for a fact that she's not altogether. So you may come across the singer.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are worse ones to come across.
There are much worse things in this world than someone who walks around singing.
Definitely.
It's
true.
true.
I felt the same way about Tom, too. Let's go back to Tom. I mean, I thought he was delightful.
Yep.
He got under your mom's skin a little bit.
She didn't have a lot of business with him.
She didn't, and I didn't quite understand it. I mean, he was a big but maybe not as big of a personality as he used to be. But he was a lot.
Yes.
But I thought it was kind of sweet that he was trying to bring joy to everyone
or at least be the center of attention. And that's what I think probably bothered her.
All right, maybe.
Yeah, but he was attention seeking.
I suppose.
And that's exactly what it was. I've seen it. It's attention
Yeah,
seeking.
okay.
He's not trying to make the place brighter. He's looking to have the attention on me. ABC,
well,
all eyes on me.
But you know what? It made it brighter for him.
Well,
so,
sure.
There you go.
Sure.
All right. And on that note.
That is the end of our list of people. Did we miss one? If we did miss one, talking to the listeners right now, not you, Jennifer.
Okay, yes, I'm aware.
All of you, the listeners, if we missed one, please let us know. We will be happy to talk about it. Thanks to everyone for listening. Please give us some feedback on this episode. Give us some feedback on everything. If you'd like to get in touch with us, we have a few ways to do it. As always, you can email us caregivinggenxstyle@gmail.com. You can text us or leave a voicemail 804-723-1221. You can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @GenXCaregiving. We're also on Facebook. Just search for the name of the podcast and you will find it. We hope to hear from you soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Good night, everyone.